Hello and welcome to the Lose Weight and Feel Great Summit. I'm your host, Joanna Peterson, and I'm thrilled to have with us today Jenny Pandol. She is a holistic health coach, a fermentation expert, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Joanna, for having me.
Thank you. Jenny, can you tell us a little bit how you get into this work and why fermentation became your passion?
So I'm a nurse, a registered nurse. I've been doing that for about 15 years, and I've done a lot in the nursing field. Worked in a lot of different capacities, but most of my career has been in home health and palliative care. And so I've had a lot of one-on-one time with patients. So that is kind of how I got started in the health field. And I realized working with clients that just by making simple changes, because I'm in their home, so I'm able to really help them with like the foods they're eating and lifestyle changes. And so I started to notice really big changes just by changing foods with people. And these are people with chronic illnesses, right? So I ended up having my own health challenges, and that forced me to really dig deeper. And it also just changed the way that I looked at my patients and how I could help them even more. But I reached a plateau of what I could do, because I was in a certain role as a nurse. And so that's what inspired me to become a health coach. And then I got introduced to fermentation for health, for my own health. And so I got really excited about that. I've actually been fermenting for a long time, but I was fermenting wine. That's actually how I got started. And I started doing that in 2003 or so. And so I had been doing that for years before I really understood the power of fermented foods. I had been introduced to them through the years. I lived in Santa Cruz for a long time, and a lot of my friends were in the health and wellness field. And so we make kombucha and different things, but I really didn't understand the power of it until I really had my own health challenges and really used it for healing.
Wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit about the benefits of fermentation?
Sure. So this is what I noticed when I introduce ferments to clients. Because now what I really focus on working in my own practice one-on-one with clients. And so one of the main things that people come to me with issues, our typical issues would be things like anxiety, depression, weight gain, fatigue. And so I noticed in my own health, in healing myself, that introducing fermented foods really enhanced my energy. It helped me have stable weight. So I started really using that with clients and introducing them how to make the fermented foods for themselves, because that's really the most powerful way to get the benefits, is really making them yourself. And so what I would notice in clients too, even within a week, like I've had people say, oh, my reflux is gone, or, oh yes, I'm starting to lose a few pounds. And I noticed that I have more energy. And so those are things that people notice pretty quickly. And it has to come along too with diet changes as well. It's not just fermented foods, because we're really trying to influence the composition, the terrain of our gut, and so foods have a big impact on that, the foods that we eat. So the combination of our diet and adding fermented foods makes a huge difference. We also get more nutrients, actually, right, when we eat fermented foods, because not only are they nutrient rich in themselves, they've broken down and released nutrients for us, like vitamins, like vitamin C and B vitamins and vitamin K. So we get, more nutrients from our foods. They're kind of pre-digested for us, and they help us digest our foods because of the enzymes that are in them as well.
That's one thing that I've noticed when I do a lot of my fermentations, with my foods or my kombucha, my bowel movements. It's so cleansing for me.
Yes.
So it's a natural detox. I have more energy, but my food doesn't sit there for too long, especially if there's more fat.
Yes.
So, yeah. So it's such a great, it's got so many good probiotics and
so many good probiotics. Absolutely. And really, when we're trying to heal our gut, we really want to have introduce as many probiotics as we can, and a diversity of probiotics too. And that's what ferments offer us, is this diversity, especially when we mix them up a little bit. So if we introduce lacto-fermented vegetables like sauerkraut or pickles. I know pickles can be confusing because really when I say pickles, people think of like the typical pickle, but it's still a lacto-fermented vegetable that, produces lactic acid bacteria. And so when we mix those, vegetable ferments and kefir and kombucha, and we get this whole complex abundance of probiotics, it really has a huge impact.
Are there some simple recipes or some simple instructions for people that are first starting that you can recommend?
So my favorite thing for people to start with is just making sauerkraut, because it's really the easiest. And if you want to add in herbs or, different vegetables, you can. But I just find it to be the easiest and most hearty ferment for people to be successful with. So there's tons of resources actually for learning how to make sauerkraut. I teach people online, so it's, and there's plenty of resources to find demos, and there's really simple. The simplest thing is just cabbage, salt, and that's it. Just to get started, just to understand how simple it is.
And then you have a lot of recipes on your website as well, right?
I don't have so many on my website. I have an online class that I offer people. But yeah, I do post some like on Instagram and Facebook.
Cool. Tell me a little bit more about the microbiome and how the fermented foods affect the microbiome.
Sure. So when we're eating fermented foods, so like I said, we're eating more nutrient rich foods, and we're not eating a ton of ferments, by the way. We're really using them like a condiment because they're so potent. Just like a small amount is very potent. So when we're eating them, they're influencing the composition, the terrain of our gut, mostly in that they're communicating with the bacteria that are there. So they can really help so they're actually releasing, like I said, they are releasing things like vitamins, but they're also releasing things like natural antibiotics. So we call that them bacteriocins. And so those actually can have an effect on inflammation and help crowding out pathogens and viruses and things that we don't want overgrown and that are causing us symptoms.
Okay, yeah. They definitely strengthen your immune system.
Absolutely. So yeah, they're actually communicating, right, with our immune system. They're communicating with the microbes that are already there, just by all the metabolites that they release. They're actually feeding each other and communicating with one another. And So we're actually getting a more balanced terrain when we introduce those probiotics, those really beneficial organisms. And when we have that balance, it's like the perfect garden, the like permaculture garden that just kind of sustains and regenerates itself. That's how I like to think about it.
Yeah, and then they balance the blood sugar as well, so you have less of a sugar craving.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, well, one reason, because we are maybe starting to outnumber things like candida that cause sugar cravings.
Mm-hmm.
I really love how much you have a really amazing story too about, you know, how fermented foods have affected your life. So I'm so glad that you understand this because I know it really impacted your health as well.
It definitely has. I mean, I have been doing fermentations, or my parents have been giving me fermentation since I was little, and so I pass it on to my children. I feed my children also fermented foods. I mean, my kids love kombucha. They love sauerkraut. They actually crave it if they have any type of meat. They ask for it.
Ah, that's so interesting. So, did they always like ferments though?
You know, I drank it through my pregnancy, and so I remember my son being like 12 months old and grabbing my kombucha and wanting to sip some.
Very cool.
Yeah, so it's just something natural that they grew up with, so they see it more as some healthy food and something that it helps them. They recognize, you know, this is actually good for me. It's just like anything else that we do. When something feels so good, even when we do it in a daily routine, we just want to do that because it just helps us with our digestions, with our energy.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that when people, it only takes like a few times of eating the fermented foods that, you know, you start to actually crave it, right? I think a lot of people have that experience and they notice that boost in energy, and that's what really hooks people. It's powerful.
And in my practice, when I have my clients do fermented foods, you know, some have time to make it. Otherwise, if they buy it in the store, buy it refrigerated, organic, you know, in a glass jar, not in a plastic container.
Right. That's super important.
Yeah.
Because the acids will break down the plastic. So I really emphasize that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they feel a huge difference with their digestion, elimination, energy, etc. So even if I just have my clients do one thing, I always start with fermentation because it helps with so many things. But it naturally helps with weight loss because it helps digestion and elimination.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And it's also a really good litmus test too, right? For if someone is not tolerating fermented foods, that really there's a really deeper issue that maybe needs looking into, right? So it's a good way to kind of test where you're at with your gut health, and it can really be a huge enhancer of health for people. And then some people can't tolerate it, but that just means, okay, you got more work to do. And so they find people like you, right?
Or like you,
or like me.
And you start with a small amount, even if it's just 1 ounce of kombucha, or if it's just, you know, a teaspoon of sauerkraut. It takes time for the body to get used to something new, and especially if it hasn't had anything healthy for so long.
Yes, that's so important, to start small. So like anything, when something's new, like whether it's a medication or whatever, it's a good idea to start small and see how you tolerate something, because they are powerful.
They are. Is there something that you love to ferment during summer that's like specific for, you know, maybe more energy, especially? Do you use herbs in your fermentations?
Do I use herbs?
Yes.
Yes, I do. And so herbs actually, I really encourage people to use, because that only enhances the nutrient benefits. Because when the, whether it's sauerkraut or whatever, it's fermenting, it is enhancing the nutrients already present. So in the summer, okay, farmers market, I go crazy there. And so really whatever is there and local and fresh, like that is what I'm gonna use, right? And of course, summer, there's so much abundance. So it's just about having fun. I'm just having fun with trying new combinations of vegetables. Nothing necessarily in particular. Sometimes it's fun to just go on a whim and find something odd and see what you can do.
A lot of my clients complain, I don't have time to make sauerkraut, I don't have time to make fermented foods. And I'm like, it just takes a mason jar, just get a mason jar, and it's going to take you just as long as going to the supermarket, making something fresh. You just get the sauerkraut going, put it in a jar, or, right on your counter in a porcelain bowl or in a glass bowl, a lid over, and it's done. It doesn't take much time. It really just takes 5 minutes. I mean, my fermentation especially, I mean, for me to prep it just takes a little while, and then I have it on the counter, and it's so exciting to see it going and to see the process.
It's super fun. And if you can make more than just a mason jar too. Like you can make a larger mason jar that's like 64 ounces. You can make, that'll last you a long time. Even a 32-ounce jar that takes 10 minutes to make, definitely quicker than going to the grocery store. And it'll last you for a while. It'll last at least a couple weeks, if not longer, just that 32 ounces.
What are the best times that you suggest to eat fermented food?
Well, ideally, I would suggest people eat a little bit with each meal, because it's going to help us digest our meals. The natural enzymes are going to help us break down our foods and actually help make them, more nutrient rich for us, more bioavailable. So in the morning, I might make myself some like eggs and put some sauerkraut on it, or avocado and put some sauerkraut on it. I will maybe sip on some kefir or kombucha, and not every day, but a couple times a week. I'll just sip on something that I make. I think fermented vegetables, like with meat, right, is really good. So, if that's something that you eat for dinner, then that's a really good option. But all you really need is like a tablespoon with your meals.
Yeah, this is why the Germans sell hot dogs with sauerkraut, right?
Right.
Do you ferment any fruits?
My favorite way to use fruits and ferments is in kefir water and kombucha, because that's my favorite way to use fruits is in secondary fermentation of those two ferments, because you can get kind of creative with flavors and combine herbs and fruit. So actually, I just made one of my favorite ones. I just tried with some friends last night. It was a combination of, this is a kefir water, a combination of blueberries, rosebuds, and elderberry. It was like drinking rosé. It was really cool. That's what we likened it to, rosé.
And how many days did you ferment that?
Well, I do the primary fermentation over like 3 or so days, and then the secondary over, I think I left that one for a long time, but you can get a lot of flavor in just a couple days.
How refreshing too in summer.
That is such a good summer ferment. Absolutely. So refreshing. It's a good mixer too, if you like that. But yeah, it's just perfect on its own, refreshing.
Mhm. And people who can't handle, like 4 ounces of any fermented drink, I actually mix it with some San Pellegrino or any sparkling water.
Exactly, yeah.
50-50, or sometimes even more, depends on how strong it is.
Yep.
It tastes delicious too.
Yes, that's a totally perfect way to mix it. Yes.
Good. What are you fermenting back there, right behind you?
Okay. I've got all kinds of things going on. Like I told you, that's this is a project that I was working on a few weeks ago. I did some filming for some demos. So I've got lots of different things. So I have some cauliflower, which was pretty good, and some fennel, that's the white one, and some carrots, and some beets, and some radishes. Radishes actually, I think, are my favorite. So that would be, those are considered like lacto-fermented pickles. So you have to make a brine for those. So it's a little different process than the sauerkraut, but they're so pretty and they're fun. They're fun to make and try different. They're just fun to look at, actually, but they're good to eat too.
Wonderful. Is there any one piece that you could recommend to the audience, something that they can implement every day to feel better, have more energy, and help them transform their lives, even if it's just something really simple?
In terms of fermentation?
Yes. Fermentation or just a lifestyle?
Okay. Well, so in terms of fermentation, like I said, just learning how to make sauerkraut, and just the very basic sauerkraut, you don't have to get fancy with recipes, is gonna really make a huge difference. Like I think I mentioned, I had a client who, her reflux was literally totally gone. She'd been on medication for years, and her reflux disappeared within a week, right? And lots of people who notice that not only do they drop weight, but they're able to keep it off, right? And that is just literally with fermented vegetables. And like I said, sauerkraut is the easiest one. There's so many resources to learn how to make it. But again, it goes hand in hand too with the foods that we eat in general. So yeah, you're going to get absolutely benefit by just eating fermented foods, but you're going to get even more benefit just by changing your diet if it needs changing. And foods in general are I think have the hugest impact. Mm-hmm. And it's really the foundation for health.
Thank you. Jenny, can you give the audience your email address or your website?
Yes.
So they can look you up too.
Yeah, so my website is jennypandol.com. So that's a good way to find me, through my website.
So anyone that wants to learn more about fermentation and get into a program, that's the website to use.
That's the website I use. You can also email me at info@jennypandol.com. And yes, if people want to learn more about fermentation, they want to learn how to do it, I teach people. And then I really work a lot one-on-one with people and help them increase their energy. And, we do that by rebalancing the gut and our hormones. And ferments have a huge part in that.
Thank you. So everyone who wants to download the free gift, please look right below and download the free gift. And I am so grateful you took your time today and be with us today. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Joanna, for having me. It was really fun to talk with you.
Thank you so much.